was talking about, he spent many years as a federal prosecutor in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, and many of those years he was going out and actually training cops what human trafficking was. And so I think the challenge, the primary challenge here and internationally is precisely as Mike was saying, it's doing no harm. The role of a journalist, first of all, is to seek truth and tell it. But then very closely following on that, particularly when you're dealing with victims that are still very much alive, it's to not further their accusation. My model when I was writing the book was a friend of mine, Samantha Power, wrote a book called Problem from Hell, which was a magisterial work on genocide. And when I met my first victim of human trafficking, I realized, and when I met my first victim who was still in jeopardy, I realized that the real difference between Samantha's work and my work and her subject and my subject were that the preponderance of her victims were dead and the preponderance of my victims are still very much alive, but may soon be dead unless I do my job, report well, and don't put them in any more jeopardy in the process.
And I wonder if you came up with any rules or anything that you could share with potentially another journalist to say, how do you deal with someone in that very delicate situation? How do you address them? Is there a different way you interview them than you would somebody in a different situation?
Pro forma, I always set out one rule when I was talking to victims, and that's that they set the rules, and that they do so in an informed manner. They understand what the implications of talking to me are. I had a general, now this is, my bar is a little bit lower than, say, guys or photographers because I'm not taking pictures. And as a general rule with my editors, I always, including my book editors at magazines, I insisted on not showing victims' faces. And this was particularly true for child sex trafficking victims. I mean, these are victims of child rape. And as in this country, most credible news organizations won't show a child rape victim full-face to camera. One would hope that that same principle would be true for foreign victims as well.
Guy, let me turn to you now. The Secretary talked about banding this to other forms of the media, which you certainly have done with your film. I guess the question for you, and maybe it's different when there's a Ross Bleckner who comes into it as an artist and you're as a filmmaker, but at what point do you cross the line from being a journalist to being an advocate? The assumption from the ambassador certainly was we all should be advocates. This is a bad thing and we all agree on it and therefore we should all be hitting that. But is there a line in terms of journalism?
You know, to put things in perspective, because I think that will make sense to answer that, I'll tell you how I got involved with this issue and because I struggle with that line exactly. About 8 years ago, I was on a sabbatical and I was traveling around the world for 2 years. And one of the places I was Cambodia, and I was walking in a street and found myself surrounded in the middle of the day by about 15 little girls, yay high, 5, 6-year-old girls, who were very aggressively soliciting me for prostitution. And one of the girls told me in broken English, you know, I yum very good, I know money today, mama's son boxing me. She'll get beaten up by the madam in the brothels. I gave them some money, I walked away, and I said, you know, I have to do something about it. And I started researching it and was horrified to find out that what I've seen in Cambodia is not an isolated case, and it's not only in Cambodia, but it is in every city, big or small, in every country in the world. And people that I spoke with, and I don't consider myself to be the most ignorant person in the world, definitely bottom 1,000, but I'm not the biggest idiot. And I truly did not know, when you find that there are like over 2.5 million kids that are victims of, you know, a year, and the numbers and the ages. I said, what can I do as a journalist? And since I have a film production company, it occurred to me that as that I speak with, they actually don't know, like I didn't, the magnitude of the problem, the ages, the locations. And I said, well, how do I expose it in a way that doesn't risk the victims and really deal with it in an honest way. With a film, those things could be much more difficult. We spoke about Hollywood. That exactly is what I wanted to avoid when I did those 3 films. I didn't want to do Tom Cruise wearing a suit, he's in the police, he's coming, he's killing all of the bad people, we're saving all of the kids, there's a peace in the Middle East, we sing a few John Lennon songs as the world is a better place. Because that's not exactly what happened, and Tom Cruise wasn't interested. So in order to tell this story in a really honest way and to hopefully get people attached emotionally, I decided to tell the story from the point of view of the victim. So a feature film that was named Holly that we actually opened here with UNIDOC at the UN about 3 years ago, and this documentary. And the struggle is, and I guess in this particular issue, actually, what I found out, that if I tell actually the story, both in the feature film with actors and in this documentary, the real story, I don't need to, there's nothing more that needs to be done. It's such a horrendous crime against humanity. I'm just out of curiosity, can I see by show of hand which one of you think that 5-year-olds should be working in a brothel and being raped? Because me and my baseball bat will be happy to have that conversation outside. I mean, saying if you expose this issue in an honest and way, how, I mean, I think that you already became an advocate because everybody that will be exposed to it should and can read conclusion very clearly as to, that needs to be stopped, what can be done, and how to go about it. And that's what we try to do in the film, is both expose the issue honestly, go at it very sensitively, not to harm anybody, especially in the documentary. And just to understand how crazy we were, we went to shoot the film in Cambodia, and about 3 days after we arrived, I get a call on my cell phone from the Interpol, and they said, you guys are insane. You're in the most place in the world to do a movie about human trafficking. You're all going to die. Get the hell out of Cambodia. Actually, they use another 4-letter word, but I'll keep the Interpol have a foul mouth. I obviously will not. I'm Israeli, so I don't listen, obviously. And I said, no. And they said, no, you don't understand. We know from our informants, there are already contracts on your lives by the Chinese mafia, Vietnamese mafia, and Cambodian mafia. They're going to kill you. Stupidly enough, we did not leave. I hired an entire army of bodyguards. So to make a movie about this subject matter, I had 40 bodyguards with automatic machine guns. So understand that that's a kind of another obstacle with this kind of issue. I mean, and then you're thinking of people like the amazing people here that won the TIP report, and people that are working with NGOs on the ground, and thinking, I was just trying to make a movie and I had an army. We had more firepower than the local mafia and probably than the local government. The question why I'm not the king of Cambodia, but I mean, this is really, I mean, it's such a difficult thing to do, to expose the story honestly. And we use, for the film that's opening this Monday in New York, we shot inside operating brothels with espionage equipment. It's cameras in buttons and glasses. Can you imagine if anybody would figure out what we're really doing, what would have happened to us in like 1 minute? So that's kind of, and that's another obstacle, really, not only not to expose the victims and be really honest with their story, but you're getting into something that it is organized crime, either, depends on estimates, either the 3rd largest organized crime in the world, human trafficking in money-wise, or according to some, already the biggest money makers for them. So while we want, obviously, and everybody in this room think this is a crime against humanity, we need to stop it, organized crime has slightly different perspective. I don't know why it invited to tea and biscuits, but so those are some kind of additional obstacles that usually people will not think about. And by the way, until I landed there with 200 people to do this film, I didn't realize that as well.